and welcome to LaSalle University's Ladder Family Center series of programs. I'm Dr. Carol Petrilo, Assistant Professor and Director of External Relations at the Ladder Family Center. And also with me today is Dr. Donna Tonry, and she is Director of Counseling and Family Therapy Master's Programs. And she will address a rather much needed program that is integrated with Ladder. So, welcome, Donna.
Thank you.
You're probably wondering, what is Ladder? Well, approximately 6 years ago, Dr. Thomas Cahey, the Dean of Arts and Sciences, convened a meeting to discuss autism initiatives across disciplines on this campus. And the result was the birth of Ladder, LaSalle Autism, Developmental Disabilities, Education Resources. LaSalle University recognizes and is committed to families that have either a child or children on the spectrum, and also might have a child or children with a diagnosis of a developmental disability. Our mission is to positively enhance the quality of life of those youngsters and their families. We wish to embrace them as partners in the process of providing another unique, coordinated, and multidisciplinary experience to create positive expectations, actions, and solutions. Ladder is rather unique in that it's supported by an interdisciplinary team that includes the following: education, psychology, speech-language hearing pathology, marriage and family therapy, and of course, social work. Paramount to the mission of community service are our students that serve as interns in the various disciplines at Ladder. Currently, Ladder is funded through the Widener Memorial Foundation, and we are regularly in the process of securing other grants to address our most needed initiatives. Ongoing each month and held at the Ladder Family Center are a series of workshops directed to the needs of the families. Available also there are individual family therapy, marriage and couples therapy, speech and language services for the children, technology accessibility and training for the families, social work, and most important, respite services. Now at this time, we need to share with you some of the successes. And on May the 2nd, 2013, Ladder sponsored Community Connections Day, and we were honored to have had as our keynote speaker, Dr. Temple Grandin, and her mother, Eustacia Cutler. And both mother and daughter are true ardent advocates for people with autism and also other developmental disabilities. We also annually participate in autism walks and conferences. We design and implement family game nights, as we had last week, March the 13th, when we sponsored families and we saluted first responders. And of course, we do television programs. Our plans for the future, which definitely include families in need, would be the expansion of more days and evenings and weekends, expanded respite care, transition programs from school to work and businesses, and also summer programs. Well, I sincerely hope I have provided for you an overview of the Ladder Family Center and its critical attention to special needs families. At this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Donna Tonry. And Dr. Tonry is the Director of the Family Services on the graduate level. Dr. Tonry, would you kindly share with the audience, number one, your background, number two, the role that you have at LaSalle, and an overview of the MFT program?
Okay. Well, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm a licensed psychologist as well. So I have an understanding, a unique understanding of the mental health field because I understand all of the different approaches. Mm-hmm. And the approach that we're going to speak about the most today is the marriage and family therapy approach. At my role here at LaSalle is I'm the director of the Counseling and Family Therapy Master's Programs. And within that program, we have a marriage and family therapy degree, master's degree, and we have a professional clinical counseling master's degree. The marriage and family therapy degree What makes it different is really the approach. We call it a systems approach.
Right.
And basically what it is that our clinicians are seeing the client. Sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's a couple, sometimes it's the entire family. But who's ever in the room and part of the work is the client. And we see the client through the perspective of their family system, their relationship system. So we're always looking at the client in the context of their relationships. So it's interesting, we call ourselves marriage and family therapists. The field came about in 1950. LaSalle's program came about in 1979. However, probably a more accurate name would be relationship and family therapy. However, we are called marriage and family therapists.
Now, we have MFT at the Ladder Family Center. Can you explain the responsibilities and the benefits of having an MFT intern at our center?
Okay. Let me first explain what the interns do in our program.
Right.
Each of our interns has to do a calendar year internship. And in that internship, they have to work with individuals, couples, and families. So when the Ladder Center opened up, it provided the opportunity for our marriage and family therapy interns to apply to the Ladder Center. What it did for the Ladder Center is it brought that systems perspective in, and especially if you're working with someone with any type of disability or issue that they have to deal with, it's always more valuable to have an approach that pays attention to the entire system. So as you can imagine, a family that has a child, and maybe the child's 2.5 years old, and they suddenly get a diagnosis of either a disability or autism.
Right.
You can imagine what that does to the family system. Well, our interns are trained to approach the family system, which means every member of the family and whatever's going on in that family system.
Now, you and I have co-taught on the graduate level a course that integrates I Represent Education and you MFT. And in that course, the emphasis is on the 3 systems.
Correct.
Would you kindly share with the audience the 3 systems, the family, education, and community?
Okay. So just think of a child. A child comes into school. Obviously, they're coming from a family system. So you have that system that gets carried into the school. The child now comes into the school system and obviously has to learn how to navigate through that system,
Right.
as well as the system has to learn how to meet the needs of the child. And then there's the community, which involves the family, the school, and every other aspect of functioning that comes into the community. So in this course, the beauty of this course was that we brought educators and family therapists together. And I truly believe they not only learned what was being taught in the course, but they learned so much from each other, because the family therapists learned about the education system.
Correct.
The education system, which I think was incredibly invaluable, learned about the family system.
Yes.
And just certainly not any particular family system, just how family systems operate. And I remember when we taught how the educators' eyes would just light up. Oh, really? In fact, I remember your eyes lighting up a little bit too.
My eyes did.
So that, I think, is the valuable piece, is not just what, as I said, what they were being taught, but for each of the systems to recognize how they have an impact on each other. And that is what I think was accomplished in that course.
As educators, and we had a lot of educators in that first course, and I think we had a counselor and 2 MFTs. And when you said my eyes lit up, I think 23 other teachers, their eyes were also lightening up, because we have our system education. Parents can share with us, okay. But then we go to that 3rd system, the community. And I think that's where there's a lack. And also, parents have somewhat of a difficulty in navigating that 3rd system. Am I correct?
Yes. And what was very interesting in that course, if you remember, we did role plays, and we did role plays of family therapy sessions. We did role plays of an IEP meeting.
Yes, we did.
And one of the students was a parent with a child with special needs.
Right.
And that parent was flabbergasted to be in that role play and then get in touch with what she felt as the person in the IEP with her child, because here she is a teacher, she's an educator, but now
Yes.
she's in a different role. So in a sense, what we saw, just in that one setting, that one role play, we saw the three systems come together. We saw the family system that we were role playing. We saw the IEP system that we were
The education.
excuse me, role playing. And then we saw the impact that it had on someone, one of the students, but actually a person from the community. So we actually saw it in front of our eyes.
The audience has to understand that when the students did the role play,
Right.
and you and I, we remove ourselves,
Correct.
okay? The role play is truly all the students. It is not rehearsed
Nope.
by any means. They have set up this fictitious family. But afterwards, the reflection that came through. When you say eye-opening, and I remember you saying, and I'll quote, I'm paraphrasing it, but no matter how many children in the family, your parent did not parent each child the same. And when you said that in class, and I started to think about my family. And then the graduate students, they thought about their family and the parenting. And now you put a child, say a sibling, with a disability, you add that on top of it.
Correct.
What does it do to the family system?
Right. Correct.
That was absolutely critical. I'm going to go back to the Ladder Family Center with the intern. The MFT intern also goes to neighborhood schools. We have 3 neighborhood schools, and they do counseling and therapy
Right.
with the young children.
Right.
Could you kindly share the benefits of that?
Okay, so now you're taking a person who's been trained in a systems approach. She comes in to work with the Ladder Center.
Right.
She's working directly with clients. Now we've put her into the community by putting her into the school system. So
right.
yes, it's the school system, but it's also part of the community. So now she takes her systems perspective, and she's working with the family system, the education system, the mental health system, or the disability system, whatever it is that that child is dealing with. And she's able to do this. That's part of our training. An intern, whether he or she, is able, because they're trained to not just recognize a family system, but systems. So now suddenly they're working with all 3 systems simultaneously.
And how we see it, how we view it, it's all authentic. Okay, this is our neighborhood schools. This is the LaSalle community.
Correct.
Okay, now the MFT is with the small groups of children.
Yes.
Let's return back to the Ladder Family Center. All right, we meet twice a week. We have the LEAP program and the LTAP program. Now, in the LEAP program, we have an education coordinator, and I have my seniors, which are education interns, and they're working with the children. Now, that's a respite time for the parents.
Okay.
However, we find that the parents stay at Ladder, and they make appointments with the MFT intern. Can you address that too now?
Do they make individual appointments? with you?
Individuals, sometimes family.
Okay.
It depends. It could start with one, maybe just the mother. And then we find that, well, maybe the father now gets into it, okay? And sometimes there might be a neurotypical sibling that is now involved. Can you address that?
Well, I suspect what's happening is obviously there's probably some level of comfort.
Oh, yes,
that they're
there is.
feeling comfortable.
Yes, there is.
They're-
Yes, there is.
Okay. So they're working with someone who, as I said, understands systems. So however the intern is approaching them probably increases 2 things. One, it probably increases their level of comfort in talking about their issues. So it's not necessarily comfort
most
about the
definite.
issues, but in addressing the issues.
Right.
So that level of comfort has been raised. And then they have someone who is going to approach it in such a non-blaming fashion. It's about what is going on? What are you experiencing? What is your system experiencing? What is it that you'd need some help with? What is it that you would like to address? And probably by this point, just the fact that they're being heard in a way that's a little bit different. It's a little bit different when you're looking at it in full context.
Yeah.
It just creates again, a deeper degree of comfort, but I also think it expands understanding. So in a sense, they're beginning to understand their own family system better by speaking to someone about it.
We have found that week after week after week, and I think we're now about, 3-4 years into this. And then just, over coffee and some cookies there, they'll say, the benefit, we can share. And we can share in privacy. And there's no judgment call or anything like that. It's just people are truly listening. I can't share this member with other family members, or my neighbor doesn't understand, or my sister doesn't understand, whatever it may be. And so I kind of think it sounds like a sounding board. Am I correct? Where they just can share, and they're on a comfort level.
And I think it's that, but I think probably in addition is maybe it normalizes it a bit, because suddenly they're talking to someone else who's experiencing the same thing and understanding.
That's it.
So suddenly they're not feeling outside. They're feeling a part of something bigger.
We've had a wonderful time talking,
Yes.
and we're going to talk some more too. So we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with Dr. Tonry, and we're also going to come back with an alum of the MFT program. So please stay with us.
Hey, fellow TV viewers, are you bored? Are you tired of the same old shows? Having thousands of channels to watch, but there's nothing there? Tired of sitting by yourself on your old mama's striped couch? Sitting in your room by yourself, watching someone who resembles your grandfather? Yeah, I know. I used to be just like you. By now, all hope is lost. You're flipping through channels, wondering what to watch. Boring, 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 boring. Wait, what's this? LaSalle TV. It's new, it's bold, it's great. It's not your ordinary TV.
Is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She currently works in community mental health and private practice. Elena is also alum of the LaSalle Marriage and Family Therapy Master's Program. Thank you for joining us today.
Good to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. I have a few questions for you. I want to talk a little bit about the Marriage and Family Therapy Program, a little bit about the graduate course that Carol and I were just speaking about, and then how it is for you to work with families with children with disabilities or on the spectrum. So my first question, what were the highlights of the LaSalle Marriage and Family Therapy Program?
I think the thing that stands out the most for me is the faculty. really supportive, really strong in their theoretical understanding of the work, and available for help outside of class. I also felt really prepared for when I began my internship. I know you mentioned that we do a calendar year-long internship. I felt really prepared for that. We have labs that we run that includes, learning skills, doing role plays, and then eventually when it came time for me to be out in the field, my internship actually led to employment at the agency that I was working at. So I really felt like they prepared me. And eventually I went and I sat for my licensure exam, and I felt really prepared for that as well. So I would say overall, from start to finish, it was just really wonderful continuity.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit about what you just said, that you went into an internship for a calendar year, and you were hired at that same site
Yes.
that you worked, so it kind of became seamless for you?
Yeah, it was. I interned at a community mental health agency doing all kinds of therapy, individual, couples, and families. So I got a taste of everything, and I felt that the agency really appreciated my ability to see the whole system and my attention to the whole system, as opposed to just looking at the individual in isolation. And they did end up hiring me, so it's been really wonderful.
Okay, so Carol and I talked a little bit about the systems approach, and obviously you know it quite well.
Sure.
So when you first began in the internship and you take that training, how did that understanding of systems affect you when you sat with an individual? Because now you have just one person in the room.
Right. So I think a misconception is sometimes that in order for you to work systemically, you need to have more than one person in the room. And LaSalle really helped me understand that you can do systems work with just one person, because while you're sitting with that one person, you can ask systemic questions. You can do things like create family genograms to understand patterns of interaction, and you can help a person see that their behavior is meaningless unless you consider the context of which they were raised.
Right. Which puts me back to the question that Carol and I spoke of. And Carol, as I said, I remember her eyes lighting up, and what she was referring to was when I said that every sibling in a family, all the children in a family, in a sense, have different parents.
Yes, they do.
Can you speak to that a little bit, what that means, that every sibling has different parents?
Sure.
That really struck me, by the way, that's why.
Yeah, I think
really
it strikes, I think all of us who have, when we reflect on our families, especially if we have siblings, we look back to the way that we were raised, and there's that common analogy like, well, you got this and I got that. And really what it is that, first of all, kids come into the family system at different developmental times. And so, at one point the parents might be really focused on that child, and then when the second child comes along, particularly if there's a child with special needs, all of a sudden the energy shifts. And one of the things that I've really noticed, both in my work in the outpatient department but also in wraparound, is that sometimes those kids that were born first, or even after the child with special needs, they start struggling as well. So as a family therapist, one of the things that I feel like I really learned at the LaSalle program was how to assess the family from a really holistic point of view. Take a look not only at the child that's struggling, that has special needs, but look as well, turn to the marital system. How is that functioning? Look at the older child, the younger child, how are they handling this adjustment? And by paying attention to all of those parts, you actually end up helping the child with special needs even more, because those subsystems become stronger.
What Dr. Tonry has shared with me and in the graduate course that we co-teach, this is another thing that took me back, is that not necessarily in the family is the child with autism the issue. You have spoken about it, and I think you experience it right now, that maybe when we take a more global look at it, there's something within the marriage itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really important that we approach children on the spectrum with a systemic point of view, because if we don't, then what we're seeing is behavior in isolation, and that behavior, when you look at the context, makes a lot more sense. So yes, it's important to shift looking at different areas of the family.
I remember in the course, the systems approach to families, educators, and communities. In that course, when we would do a role play of a family and the family would come in, everyone in the room expected that the family would talk about, in this particular case it was autism, expect the family to talk about autism. And I think that the autism came up in the first few sentences of the
Yes,
session.
sure.
And then it just morphed into all of the reality that the family was
Other
dealing with,
issues.
other issues. And the autism really didn't take front and center.
It didn't.
And I think sometimes families think that it does.
Right, and in that course, so when I took the course with both of you, I actually played the role of the therapist in the role play.
you did.
And so the education students ended up being the different family members. And I do remember that as being feedback, that as we wove our way through the session, by the end, when we had time for reflection, as you mentioned, one of the biggest things that they ended up saying was, wow, I can't believe how little we actually talked about the identified patient, identified client. And that just shows, how important it is for us to pay attention to all parts.
What do you think you brought to that course? Because you walked in as a marriage and family therapist
Yeah.
in training,
Sure.
and you're sitting with a group of educators. What do you think you brought to that course?
Well, it was interesting for me. It was really a growth-oriented class for me because I felt a little bit like a fish out of water at first. I was actually the only MFT student at that time in that particular class. So I think I shared with them how important it is to look at the child and the parents as a unit. I really felt also that they taught me so much about not only the educational system, but how important it is to have really strong collaboration and communication, especially now that I'm out working in the field. I communicate a lot with educators, and they really value me reaching out to them, particularly as an ally, because sometimes as a service provider, you just get stuck. And you need that wrap to be able to support.
Hey, that's a good segue. That's a good segue right there. Well, we do have to say goodbye for today. And I want to thank Dr. Tondry and Elena over here. The collaboration with the MFT program and the Ladder Family Center is outstanding. So if you want to check us out, please go on our website after the credits. And thank you for your support.